I want you to think about the last time something felt slightly off. Maybe it was a news headline you scrolled past too quickly. Maybe it was the price of something at the grocery store that made you pause for just a second. Maybe it was a conversation with a neighbor about the weird weather, or the power flickering during a storm that lasted a little longer than it should have. Most people feel it. That low-level hum of unease, that something somewhere is a little more fragile than it used to be. And most people do exactly the same thing with the feeling. They push it down, move on, and tell themselves that if something really bad happened, they'd figure it out. Here's the thing. In every documented crisis, from the 2021 Texas freeze to the supply chain collapses of the last few years, the people who struggled most weren't the ones who lacked gear. They weren't the ones who lacked money. They were the ones who lacked a certain kind of thinking, a certain kind of awareness, and in almost every case, they fell into one of 5 very specific categories. Today, I want to walk you through those 5 types of people, not to judge them, not to scare you, but because there's a very good chance that you or someone you love has some of these tendencies, and the earlier you recognize them, the easier they are to correct. By the end of this, you're going to look at your own habits a little differently, and one of these types, the 4th one especially, is going to surprise you because it's not who you think it is. Let's get into it. Type 1, the assumption maker. This is the most common type. The assumption maker has never actually stress tested their plan. They've thought about it, maybe even talked about it, but they've built their entire sense of security on things they've never verified. They say things like, "Oh, we just go to my brother's place," or "I'd fill up the bathtub," or "We have a week's worth of food in the pantry." And when you ask if they've actually tried any of that, the answer is almost always no. Here's what most people miss. Assumptions feel exactly like facts until the moment they don't work. And in a crisis, that moment of discovery is the worst possible time to be learning. During Hurricane Katrina, thousands of people assumed the levees would hold. Thousands more assumed evacuation routes would be clear. Every one of those assumptions was reasonable. Every one of them failed. The fix is simple but uncomfortable. Actually test your plan. Spend one weekend without using the grocery store. Cook a meal without electricity. Drive your evacuation route and time it. You will find gaps you never knew existed, and finding them now is the entire point. Imagine reaching for the manual can opener you were sure you had on day 2 of a real blackout, and realizing you threw it out 3 years ago when you got the electric one. That's an assumption maker moment. It happens to smart, capable people every single time, but their assumption maker at least has good intentions. The next type doesn't even get that far. Type 2, the comfort dependent. The comfort dependent isn't lazy. They're often very capable, very intelligent people, but they've built their entire daily life around a level of convenience that simply will not exist in a real crisis. And they've never, not once, voluntarily stepped outside of it. Think about what the average person's day looks like. Climate-controlled home, hot shower, coffee from a machine, food available within a 5-minute drive, entertainment on demand. For most people, these aren't luxuries anymore. They're the baseline. They're the floor. When that floor disappears, the comfort dependent doesn't just struggle physically. They struggle psychologically because they've never had to sit with discomfort long enough to get through it. We saw this during the early days of the 2020 lockdowns. People who had never cooked from scratch were staring at a pantry full of raw ingredients with no idea what to do. People who had never gone a day without their routine were experiencing genuine distress within 72 hours. Not because the situation was life-threatening, but because the comfort layer had been removed. The tactical advice here isn't about gear. It's about deliberate discomfort. Once a month, remove a layer of comfort. Sleep without the air conditioning. Cook over a camp stove. Go a full day without your phone. You're training your nervous system to stay calm when the baseline disappears. Imagine a family on night 1 of an extended blackout. The kids are restless. The house is getting cold. If nobody in that family has ever sat with discomfort and come out the other side, that first night is going to feel unsurvivable. And the decisions people make when something feels unsurvivable are almost always the wrong ones. But the next type looks, on the surface, like they have it all figured out. Type 3, the lone wolf. The lone wolf has spent real time and real money preparing. They have the gear, the food storage, the plan, and they've decided, consciously or not, that they're going to handle whatever comes entirely on their own. This type surprises people because the lone wolf looks like the most prepared person in the room, and in the first 72 hours of a crisis, they probably are. But here's what most people miss. Long-term survival has never, in the entire history of human civilization, been a solo endeavor. Think about every historical example of people surviving extended hardship, the communities that made it through the Great Depression, the neighborhoods that held together after major disasters. In every case, the people who made it had networks, skills they could trade, relationships they could lean on. The lone wolf has a critical vulnerability. They can only be in one place at a time. They can only stay awake so many hours. And the moment they get sick or injured or simply exhausted, their entire system collapses because there's nobody to pick up the slack. Start building your network now, before you need it. Not a formal group with meetings and bylaws, just relationships with people who have complementary skills. The neighbor who's a nurse, the guy down the road who can fix anything mechanical. These relationships, built on trust before a crisis, are worth more than any piece of gear you could buy. Imagine it's week 2 of a real disruption. The lone wolf has been running on 4 hours of sleep for days, managing everything alone. Then they twist an ankle. Suddenly everything they've built is one bad step away from falling apart. Meanwhile, 3 streets over, a small group of neighbors are rotating watch shifts, sharing skills and sleeping soundly because someone else has the next 4 hours covered. Community isn't a weakness. It's the oldest survival technology we have. But the next type has a problem that goes even deeper. Type 4, the information hoarder. This one is going to surprise you. The information hoarder isn't someone who knows too little. It's someone who knows too much and has done nothing with it. You probably know someone like this. Maybe you are someone like this. They've watched hundreds of hours of survival content. They can tell you the best water filtration systems on the market. They know the caloric density of freeze-dried food versus canned goods. They've read the books and followed the channels. But their pantry looks exactly like everyone else's. Their go bag doesn't exist. Their family has no plan. Because somewhere between consuming the information and acting on it, something stopped them. This is one of the most well-documented patterns in emergency management research. People who are highly informed about a risk are not statistically more likely to prepare for it than people who know very little. Knowledge without action provides zero protection. We saw this clearly before major hurricane seasons. Coastal residents who had lived through previous storms, who knew exactly what was coming and exactly what they should do, still waited too long to evacuate, still hadn't stocked supplies. Information without implementation is just anxiety with extra steps. Pick one thing and do it this week. Not a list, not a plan to make a plan. One physical action. Buy the water filter. Put 3 days of food in a bag. Write down your family's meeting point. The goal is to break the gap between knowing and doing, because once you take that first physical step, the next one becomes significantly easier. Imagine someone who has spent 2 years watching preparedness content, sitting in the dark on night 1 of a real blackout, realizing that all of that knowledge is useless because none of it ever left their head and entered their home. That's a specific kind of regret, and it's entirely avoidable. But there's one more type, and this one affects the people around you, not just you. Type 5, the social anchor. The social anchor is someone in your life who, in a crisis, will slow you down. Not because they're a bad person, but because their response to stress is to freeze, deny, or look to others to make every decision for them. Every family has one. And in a real crisis, the social anchor becomes the single biggest variable in whether your plan works or doesn't. Because you can have the best preparation in the world, but if the people around you are paralyzed or in denial at the exact moment you need a move, your preparation only gets you so far. We saw this during major evacuations. Families who had a plan but couldn't execute it because one member refused to believe the situation was serious. The social anchor isn't always obvious in normal life. They often only reveal themselves when the stakes are real. The tactical advice here is the most human one on this list. Have the conversation now. Not a dramatic, worst-case scenario conversation. Just a calm, practical one. Hey, if something happened and we needed to leave quickly, what would we do? Walk through it together. Assign roles. Make sure everyone knows the plan, not just you. A plan that only exists in your head is not a family plan. It's just your plan. Imagine you've done everything right. You have supplies, a route, a destination. And when the moment comes to move, the person you love most is standing in the kitchen saying, they're sure it'll be fine. They don't want to overreact. Maybe they should just wait and see. That's not a gear problem. That's a communication problem. And you can solve it right now, today, with a 10-minute conversation. The quiet margin 5 types of people. The assumption maker, the comfort dependent, the lone wolf, the information hoarder, and the social anchor. And if you're being honest with yourself, you probably recognized a little bit of yourself in at least one of them. Maybe more than one. That's not a failure, that's just being human. The difference between the people who endure a crisis and the people who are overwhelmed by one almost never comes down to gear or money or luck. It comes down to awareness. The willingness to look at your own habits and ask honestly whether they would hold up under real pressure. Most people won't do that. They'll watch this, nod along, and go back to their day. And that's okay. But if something in this felt a little too familiar, if one of these types hit a little close to home, then you already know what your next step is. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be expensive. It just has to be real. You don't need to prepare for everything. You just need to prepare for the things that matter most. And right now, the most important thing you can do is close the gap between knowing and doing. If you're serious about being ready, this is where it starts. Not with a list, not with a shopping cart, with a decision. Stay grounded, stay aware. I'll see you in the next one.